Today we are talking about 7 of the most disturbing short films I've ever seen. Now, I've watched hundreds of shorts over the years, from psychological nightmares to extreme underground films, and I've personally found that short form horror content is way more intense and way more effective when it's done right. And the movies I'm about to show you genuinely stuck with me long after the credits rolled. So some of these films are disturbing because of the graphic content they choose to show us, and others are disturbing simply because of the subject that they are about. And there's a couple of films on this list that are so disturbing you feel like you've wandered into something you shouldn't have seen. So my name's Ricky. I love horror movies, and here are 7 of the most disturbing short films I've ever seen. So first up we have the Gable film. So if you spent any time researching internet horror, there's a chance you've heard whispers of this film, but it's an incredibly obscure film that not a lot of people know about. So this is a really short horror film, and it presents itself as like damaged found footage or home video footage. We simply see a family recording themselves whilst messing around in the woods, and at first everything seems normal until in the distance we see something. Now, this isn't an incredibly graphic movie. For me, what makes this so disturbing is this feeling, this atmosphere that something is incredibly wrong. The film feels authentic in a way that most found footage horror movies fail to achieve. The low quality video, the shaky camera work, and this thing in the distance all adds to this really overwhelming atmosphere that we are being watched. Now, this is one of those films where your mind does most of the work. Your mind is your own worst enemy, because we're not too sure what it is we're watching, what we're seeing, or what we're witnessing. So it's the anticipation of something that we think might happen that really messes us up here. Now, for a lot of people, this probably won't be the most disturbing short film they've seen, but for me, this one really got under my skin. Next up, we have Teeth. So this is one of the most unique short horror films I've ever seen, and it happens to be one of the most disturbing animated films I've seen. The film follows the story of this man's life and the gradual loss of his teeth. Now, granted, on paper this doesn't sound like anything special, but trust me, the execution of this film is out of this world good. The film turns something as ordinary as dental care into an absolute nightmare. The story really starts to spiral into fixation, psychological collapse, self-destruction, and just this general anxiety that people have around their teeth. There are body horror elements to this, and we don't normally think about animated films when we talk about body horror, but the body horror in this short is some of the best I've seen, because it really plays on fears that we all have as humans. Everybody fears aging, and everybody fears the loss of control over our own bodies, and Teeth takes those anxieties and turns them into something really unsettling. It's really well written. I found myself incredibly fixated on this short. I found myself very much invested in the story itself, and for such a short runtime, the story is really well written. It gives us exactly what we need to know, and a lot of short films try and do too much, whereas this film gets to the point, it shows us what it wants to show us, and the result is horrifying. Next up, we have Still Life. This one feels like a nightmare somebody accidentally caught on camera. The film centers around the sleep-deprived driver who accidentally hits something with his car, and then he has to wander around this really bizarre town looking for help. And what follows is a surreal descent into paranoia, confusion, and just like pure dread. The film never really gives you any solid ground to stand on. Like every interaction feels wrong, and every isolated location feels like some kind of abandoned reality. This is the movie equivalent of what it must feel like to be trapped inside a fever dream. Now, the thing that I found so disturbing about this movie was this constant sense that reality was collapsing, that reality itself was somehow breaking down, and it just feels like a panic attack. And somebody who has suffered with panic attacks throughout his life, that's what this film made me feel like. The imagery is bizarre. Desolation is everywhere, and this town just feels like it's completely void of human kindness. Like I said at the start of this video, some of these films are disturbing not because of what they show us, but because of how they make you feel. And this film made me feel so incredibly panicky and bleak. It offers you no salvation, no solution or catharsis. It is just pure dread. Next up we have Dead Grandma. And I'm not messing around with this film. This film made me audibly gasp. I showed this to my girlfriend and it made her cry. Now, despite only being 1 minute long, this is quite possibly the most shocking and most effectively written short horror film I have ever seen. Now, the reaction I got from this film was so visceral and so very human that I quite literally couldn't stop thinking about it for days. Now, the premise is simple. Grandma dies at the absolute worst possible time. Now, the less you know about this short film going in, the better. So I'm not going to tell you anything about what happens in this short film. Go in completely blind. Sometimes I watch horror films or I watch short horror films and I think to myself, I can never write anything as good as this. And Dead Grandma was exactly that. The amount of information we get in such a short amount of time is absolutely staggering. Everything feels off and wrong right from the beginning in a way that's really difficult to explain because the title of this short film gives us the premise. And that feeling of not being able to explain why something feels so terrible is where really good horror lives. Horror that uses real world fears and anxieties in a way that is just simply horrifying. And it's proof that you don't need a lot for horror to scare you. If you can come up with a simple idea and execute that idea the way that this film has, then you're onto a winner, because this is quite possibly the best short film I've ever seen. Next up we have Cutting Moments. Now, this short horror film is genuinely difficult to finish. Cutting Moments tells the story of a completely dysfunctional suburban family. A woman trapped in a loveless marriage slowly reaches breaking point as the dysfunction around her becomes impossible to ignore. Now, this short horror film is so disturbing because of A, what it's about, and B, how graphic it is. Beneath the really intense graphic imagery, this really is a short film about human behaviors at their absolute worst. The film focuses on themes like emotional neglect, isolation, and resentment in a way that feels incredibly and painfully realistic. And the subject matters covered in this short film are incredibly grown up, if you know what I mean. It builds to a ending that is genuinely shocking, genuinely graphic, and you will find really hard to finish. I mean, I've seen hundreds of really disturbing short films, long form films, and this is one of the hardest pieces of content I've ever sat through. There are scenes and there is imagery in this short film that once you've seen it, you won't be able to unsee. It is vivid, it is depressing, and it is based on, real life. And that's what makes it so disturbing. It's not scary, it's emotionally devastating. Next up we have Aftermath. Now, if you look up lists of the most disturbing short films ever made, you will probably see Aftermath somewhere on that list. For me personally, this is the most disturbing short film I've seen based on my initial reaction when I first watched it. And most importantly, when I watched it. I discovered this short film years before I was really clued on to how dark cinema could get. And as you can imagine, a younger version of me just getting into horror and just getting into films would have found this incredibly difficult to sit through. But I sat through it, and by the end of it, I was an absolute wreck. So this short film takes place almost entirely inside a morgue. So the film centers around this morgue technician. Everybody's gone home and he has been left there by himself with a recently passed female. And like I said, what follows is one of the most uncomfortable viewing experiences I've ever had. Now, this film is disturbing because of how graphic it is, sure, but it's also disturbing because of how realistic and how clinical everything feels. This came out in 1994, man, and this was before CGI was really being used all the time, And that is what makes this feel so real. Everything is practical and done in camera, and it is so incredibly and brutally realistic. The film strips away any element of fantasy or escapism. Instead, what we're left with is some of the most horrific images put to film that take place in a place that feels incredibly real. Our world. This is our world. People are doing this in our world. Even decades after this film was made, it still remains one of the most infamous short films of all time, and having seen it numerous times, I can see why. It is brutal. And finally, we have Begotten. Now look, I know that this film is about 70 minutes long, so it's not technically a short film, but what I saw the first time I saw it was a short film, a shortened down version of the worst clips from this film. And because of that, I've always considered this a short film. And look, it's shorter than a lot of other feature films, so give me a break. But this is without question one of the most disturbing film experiences I've ever had. And I chose the word experienced very carefully, because Begotten doesn't feel like a traditional film. It feels like a piece of art that you experience, a piece of art that happens to you. Now, to me, Begotten feels like a genuine nightmare, like somebody has somehow managed to record somebody's nightmare. The visuals are incredibly grainy and broken down and impossible to process. It feels like we have discovered a genuine curse, something that is cursed, and by watching it, something terrible might happen to us. Like the first time I saw this, it felt dangerous to be watching it. Unlike a lot of other disturbing short films, Begotten doesn't rely only on graphic disturbing content. It relies heavily on atmosphere, and there are moments where your brain struggles to identify what it is we're actually watching. It weaponizes confusion. Now, like I've said, I've watched countless short films, horror films over the years, but rarely do any of them give me the same sort of feeling I had when I first experienced this film. And to this day, I still haven't seen the entirety of this film because of how awful it makes me feel. So those were 7 of the most disturbing short films I've ever watched. Now, I have to stress, this is my opinion. You might watch some of these and think they're masterpieces. You might watch some of these and think they're boring. Fear is subjective. Art is subjective. These are just 7 of the films that personally made me feel the worst. Films that stayed with me long after I finished watching them, and that for me usually means that the horror has done its job. So let me know in the comments what the most disturbing short film you've seen is. If you like this video, or you're into horror movie deep dives, disturbing movie deep dives, or documentary deep dives, don't forget to like and don't forget to subscribe. Be good to yourself, more importantly, be good to other people, and I'll see you in the next one.